Television. Well, fintech startups operating across several sectors in Nigeria raised an estimated $248.6 million, an equivalent of 102.77 billion, and are in funding in the third quarter of 2021. And this represents an increase of about 103% compared to 122.76 million raised in the second quarter of the year. Well, a report from Telema Research shows in 2020, Nigerian startups attracted over half of the $160 million total fintech venture capital funding in Africa, making Nigeria investors' most preferred destination. Well, to tell us more about this report is Rahul Shah, head of financial sector, including fintech research at Telema. Great to have you on the program.
My pleasure.
So from your report, it shows that Nigeria attracted over half of the $160 million total fintech venture capital funding in 2020. What do you think drove this?
So I think we shouldn't be too surprised by Nigeria attracting the biggest chunk of investment in Africa. It is the biggest economy. It is the most populous nation. What I think is interesting is that VCs are looking at the country in a very different way from traditional mainstream investors. If you look at the Nigerian equity market, for example, the valuations are quite depressed in a global context. And that tells us that the investors in listed equities are, I would say, more worried about risks and uncertainty, whether it's exchange rates, the security situation, production bottlenecks, lack of investment. These are probably some of the issues that those investors are thinking about. VCs have those issues in mind, but they have a much longer time horizon. You're talking 10 years plus. And so for them, a lot of these issues are just short-term noise. And what they see instead, as I say, is the largest economy, the biggest population, a huge number of opportunities that technology allied with the ingenuity of Nigerian people can solve a lot of the problems that exist today. And so that's what they're looking at. And if we look at where they're investing, the bulk of that investment is going into the fintech sector. So financial inclusion is a key theme that they're playing. And, in Nigeria, there are probably 70 million adults that are financially excluded in some way. If you're not in formal employment, you're not getting a regular monthly paycheck, a lot of banks don't want to know you. And unfortunately, for most Nigerians, that kind of job, that kind of employment is not available to them. So basically, you have 70 million people whose basic financial needs aren't being met. You have innovative companies bringing new ideas, new solutions to the table. Not all of them will succeed, but some will, and those that do will be very valuable. And that's what VCs are looking at the moment.
All right, given this, chunk of investment, how are some of these, fintech startups, how are they faring right now?
Well, you're seeing a lot of fresh money coming into these fintechs. And what we've seen from the experience elsewhere is it's not enough just to have a great idea, but you need money backing that idea because you need to educate the customers and show them that the product that you have is in their best interests. And what we've seen, one of the issues in most emerging markets is the lack of financial education. So basic concepts like risk diversification or compound interest, those are some of the concepts that you need your customer to understand if you want to sell them financial products. And so a lot of the fintechs are having to spend money on education rather than purely on marketing or producing the service that they're actually offering. Okay. And so to come back to your question, I think it's hugely important that the fintechs are attracting money because that is a key piece of the jigsaw in terms of fintechs actually succeeding and bringing finance to the masses in Nigeria.
All right. What do you think, are the main factors for success that, Nigerian fintech startups should actually, keep in mind?
Yeah. So we actually we mapped around 250 fintechs across Nigeria, and we've done a similar exercise in other markets. So we think we've got a good handle on, what fintechs need to achieve to succeed. And I think in Nigeria, there are three things. Firstly, building strategic partnerships. If you try and do everything yourself, it can take time. And in that time, in an industry that's fast-moving like the fintech sector, you can get left behind. So I think building strategic partnerships can help you get a big customer base. It can also add products to your suite, and it can also bring expertise that would be difficult to achieve. So, payments is, I'd say, the hottest sector in fintech in Nigeria at the moment. And you've seen, Flutterwave partner with PayPal. You have Paga partnering with Visa. These are relationships that help improve your credibility with the customer. If Visa is partnering with you, then you're not some fly-by-night operator. But it also brings a lot of expertise to the table, and I think that's helpful. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is basically you need a high-quality product. Now that's a pretty broad term, but basically, speed of execution, reliability, a product that's has some innovative features that bring something to the table. These are things that that you need as well, because repeat custom is basically the key to generating value for fintechs. And then thirdly, a point that I sort of touched on before, but I think in Nigeria, it's very important to target the financially excluded. There are more excluded individuals than there are financially included individuals. So it's a huge market. There's limited competition in that space. So if you can provide a solution to these people, then you can generate a lot of customer loyalty, and that will pay off in the long term. And some of the unicorns in Nigeria, such as OPay, have been very vocal about their work in terms of trying to improve financial inclusion in the country. And I think that's right. So those are the three things that I'd highlight at the moment.
Okay. Well, Nigerian fintechs are clearly, growing fast. But what do you think is holding them back from actually doing better?
Yeah. So we're seeing some great growth numbers from some of these fintechs, but life is not easy, and hats off to them for good execution. But I think the first factor that I'd highlight again is the poor financial literacy. It's not unique to Nigeria, but we see this in many emerging markets where the mass market is not that well versed in key financial concepts. So a lot of these. So obviously that's not an easy thing to change overnight, but I think fintechs are helping by educating their customers and making them aware of key financial concepts. So I think that's one thing that's holding them back. I think another factor is a lack of trust. So as a startup, you're probably not going to be well known to the mass market, and also typically people are very conservative when it comes to their own money, and quite rightly so. You put those two factors together, and there's a huge barrier of trust that needs to be overcome. And as I say, partnerships can be one way of scaling that barrier. But money also helps in terms of advertising and marketing your products as well. I think another factor is fraud. We've seen in Nigeria and other markets that the incidence of cybercrime has risen significantly over the last few years. And that doesn't help when your basic product is a digital product. And so I think, the authorities are working to deal with this, but obviously cyber criminals are, typically one or two steps ahead of the game, and that's why those numbers are growing so rapidly. Right. And then finally, red tape. I think it makes sense to have red tape. There's a lot of personal data that fintechs can capture, but there are ways of protecting that data that don't need to be so cumbersome, and I think that's an area that regulators should look at.
All right, Raul, we'll keep tracking that space to see how Africa grows when it comes to fintech, Nigeria and Africa. Well, Raul Shah, Head of Finance Sector Research at Telema, thank you so much for coming on the program. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much.